Nightcliff, what is your question?
Madam Speaker, my question is for the Attorney-General. Attorney, we've just heard you speak about all of your supposed consultation with women's legal services about your new law proposals. I would like to direct you to a joint media release yesterday from Quills, Top End Women's Legal and Central Australian Women's Legal. They said, and they expressed, quote, serious concern over the lack of consultation with specialist domestic family and sexual violence. They say we cannot support legislative changes made without meaningful consultation with those who work on the front line every day to protect women and children in the Territory. We've got a quote here from the CEO of Top End's Women Legal Services, who you mentioned. Women are dying. More must be done to end violence, but this cannot be achieved without working with the organisations and experts who provide critical support. Attorney, what is your definition of consultation? And how can you say you're making laws for DV victims when the actual people who are doing the work say that you're not consulting with them and they don't support your legislation?
Attorney-General.
That is a great question, Madam Speaker, and I am so happy to be standing here today to answer all of these questions about the state of domestic violence here in the Northern Territory, which we know has increased by 82% over the last 8 years under a Labor government who used to say all of this bluff and wind and nothing, but actually never took any action to protect the victims. We have had so many deaths, Madam Speaker, so many, under a Labor government over the last 8 years. We heard the minister talk about a coronial that was done a number of years ago by a former coroner where none of the recommendations were taken up. Shameful, absolutely shameful. We've had another coronial which we're working towards to get actions taken out of it. And I'm going to stand here right now, like I did this morning, like I did just before in question time, and tell you we are bringing forward legislation taking action to keep women safe, to put the perpetrators behind bars. That is exactly what we are doing. We are increasing the victims' levy by 41%, Madam Speaker. What that means is that there is more money in the bucket to pay for victims' services. We have not seen an increase in the victim levy for a very long time. Labor certainly did not increase it, and we need more money because you know what, Madam Speaker? The federal government doesn't care. They didn't give the Northern Territory any extra money for domestic violence services, for domestic violence legal services for our women. We do care about people who are victims of domestic violence. We absolutely care, which is why I brought forward this legislation. We're going to make sure that if a perpetrator breaches their DVO and there's harm caused, they will go to jail. We are going to make sure that when something changes in the offender's life, like they get out of prison or they cut their ankle bracelet off, that the victim knows where they are. Because under Labor, they didn't fix that system.
Take your seat, please, Minister. What's your point of order, member for Nightcliff?
110 relevance. I didn't ask about Labor. I specifically asked what is your definition of consultation, seeing as the orgs you've named have said you have not consulted with them, and how can you say you're making laws for DV victims if you will not meet with these organisations and consult properly?
So they say that, Minister, the question was about consultation, but you will be heard in silence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And like I've said a number of times today, is I have met with the Women's Legal Services a number of times. The Top End Women's Legal Services 3 times. The Central Australian Women's Legal Services 3 times. There was a whole group of women's services and community legal services that came together in this very building that met with me for, I think it was about 2 hours, Madam Speaker, and they told me a lot of information about what they are looking for, the things that they were failed by under the previous Labor government. Madam Speaker, we also sent that legislation to the Scrutiny Committee. The Scrutiny Committee, which will ensure—
Please, Minister, if it's about relevance, I think you can sit down, because she is talking now about consultation. What's your point of order?
But part 3, if the minister can't answer the question, can she redirect it to the minister who can, like her colleague Minister Cowell, who can actually answer a question?
Minister, you've got the call.
The Scrutiny Committee, Madam Speaker, I was talking about. Remember Labor scrapped the Scrutiny Committee after the last 4 years, saying, no, nothing to see here. We're just going to ram down legislation down your throat. Not us. We are taking action. We are being transparent. We sent that legislation to the Scrutiny Committee so that everybody in the Territory, every single body in the Territory can have their say about legislation. There is plenty of time for that to happen because we've actually got a pretty big break in between this sittings and the May sittings. So everyone will have their chance. Put forward whatever you wanted to say, put submissions forward, go and present
Your time
in the
has
public
expired.
hearings.
Supplementary, member for Nightcliff.
Are you saying that these three orgs who put out this joint statement are lying when they say that you have not consulted properly with them? Because that's what they're saying.
Minister.
I don't know what else to say to you, member for Nightcliff, through the chair, Madam Speaker. I've talked a number of times about the number of times I've met with all of these organisations. There is so much more to be done with the scrutiny committee that's going to be happening for the next 2 months before the next sittings. I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of the people that are saying these things about our accountability. We are bringing forward legislation based on the what the Territorians have voted for us to do. They want us to keep people safe. We want to keep women safe. We want to keep victims of domestic violence safe. And if that means the perpetrator is behind bars, guess who's safe? The victim. The victim is safe when the perpetrator is behind bars. That is the most important part.
Take your seat, Minister. What's your point of order? Member for
110 relevance. Are you suggesting that the very people you named here having met with are lying around the lack of consultation?
Look, the minister is answering a very peculiar question, I have to say. But anyway, it's your call.
Speaker, no.